and the reason for government mandating this backdoor access, we can why is government so forceful, or why they are in such hurry, or so as we see in the criminal investigation, they have, like in the modern times we can already know that compared to previous era, like we store data which we store data in form of letters or hard copies in cabinets, closets, or if you want to protect it, we will have a secret place in somewhere else. Like in this modern era of explosion of devices, we are storing each and every day of our life in a digital device. So what in like recently, what they, as you can see on screen, like in the period of October 2014 to June 2015, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office could not access potential evidence from 74 of the 92 cases involved iPhone iOS 8, in which we just saw it was the first iOS which had a default full disk encryption. So which it essentially prevented law enforcement officials to essentially carry out investigations. So as we can see from the below, this is a quote said by former Director Comey. So they had essentially argued that it hinders law enforcement's ability to solve or enforce or solve the problems. So which they argued that it is shielding criminals from getting convicted. It's the it is the one way of convicting or letting them go. Like the only way, like the digital device was the only key evidence in difference between conviction and letting them go. So this is a question, like the politicians have argued that technology preventing the government access to information should not exist. So what they are seeking is essentially that the company should whatever innovation or software like they are providing, like they are asking for a default solution such that the backdoor should exist. So do you agree with this limit on personal privacy? Why or why not?
So my take on this would be that here actually there's also another point of innovation. So once you say, for example, if the company says, the government says that this should be you should give me the encryption keys or you should give me one backdoor. So that will actually stifle innovation, because as the innovation happens, the nature of backdoor might also change, but the government will not be able to. So there's a mismatch between the government's capability of keeping up with the technology and the these companies pursuing innovation. So this might actually stifle innovation that way.
Yes, as you rightly said, there are multiple stakeholders in generating or creating technology which is used by all people. So it is difficult to coordinate the developments or the technical analysis of how the background should be implemented. So it is difficult for the government as well as tech companies to follow this method.
I feel that they actually, if you see this access thing, what Sir had also brought out, this Apple, this has been going on for a very long time. Whatever I have read about it, sir, there is hardly any system or technology which has not got backdoors incorporated into, because such is the world of geopolitics. And if US is leading and it frequently uses all these companies, because one of the major revelations of the Edward Snowden case was that the US organizations which they have got branches of their NSA which actively involves itself in actual cyber warfare across states. They had infiltrated Huawei servers. They had deliberately done that. It was the only thing was he brought out all these things in the open that they have been doing it. Now it is a misnomer. Personal privacy is a fallacy for the public, for us to fight it out on it. Ki I will give this. Yes, to some extent in the open domain, in the corporate domain, we can live in that under that assumption that we have some privacy, and at least in the open domain within the companies and the corporate, it should not be shared. But in all other things, there's nothing which is, and every country does it, including ours. Any person, the moment he comes into media, the IB starts off its file dossier on it. So it is a misnomer, this privacy. So the only thing is, for our normal day-to-day lives, how can we limit our information not spreading? And for that purpose, yes, there should be some degree. Otherwise, geopolitics will always demand that privacy or government access to information will always be there. And all these companies, whatever they are saying in backdoor, they have to stay in that in their country. They have to cooperate. And in this thing, there's one particular thing where this in this Snowden episode was there is an organization called the 5I. The foundation was dated in 1941. So there are 5 countries which are signatories to it, and they are supposed to cooperate on all signals intelligence. That is why UK is part of it, USA, New Zealand, Australia and Canada. And they have been doing it for a long time. The Stuxnet virus, which once Sarad also mentioned in Iran, was actually developed by this TAO. It is part of NSA, Tailored Access Organization, which indulges in deliberate cyber espionage. It has also done the same in our country also, but these are all hush-hush things. It is the internet itself was developed from the defense, from the CIA side only, and frequently in the dark web they deliberately placed what Sir was mentioning one day was RAS, ransomware as a service. They deliberately placed those programs over there, the malwares and all that, so that it goes into each and every system of ours, whether it is OnePlus or iPhone and all this. So it is a misnomer, but yes, for the public perception, for normal day-to-day use, like the supermarket case which we were discussing yesterday, at least in to some degree, some semblance of security needs to be there, medical records and all. But otherwise, in the larger good, or the government so believes that in the larger interest of the geopolitics or their particular interest countries, their personal privacy needs limitations. So that is their perspective, and our perspective will have to live with it, that yes, we want at least to some degree in the day-to-day life.
Yeah, actually rightly brought out by Colonel Vijay. Nowadays actually we can say that 100% privacy is a myth. That cannot be ensured, whether you can say right to privacy is a fundamental right or whatever. And again, most of these countries, actually the advanced countries, they exploit this as a warfare tool actually, which is more actually damage causing actually to the other country. But again, the question and the main aspect is the users and the customer, they should be made actually aware that these things are happening and they should not be kept in the dark. That is the main thing actually.
Yeah. I think there are two sides to it. One is in response to an incident, if government wants to or FBI wants to conduct an investigation, and so key information is in a phone, and what they argued is if a militant or a criminal died, so the password has died with that person, so password doesn't exist. So in that specific case, if law enforcement agency is not given access, say by Apple, to decrypt the message, they are actually not able to do justice, because they are protecting criminals in that case, or this incident can happen again. So from a safety point of view, it moves to the safety argument. For national safety or individual safety, it is also important to have access to the information in the phone. But what you are actually now showing is a very different phenomenon. It is not in response to an incident, or it's not for investigation but for monitoring. Government seems to be continuously monitoring individuals' personal data and collecting that data extensively from within the country and outside the country, and profiling people. So that is not for criminal investigation, but it is for monitoring, in which case a backdoor is continuously opened. The government in that case is saying we need backdoor not for investigation but for monitoring. That actually makes the case very different, in the sense privacy should be there, but government should be completely watching what you see. And when you say or use the term government, it looks like God, or it's some extraterrestrial agent. But we also have to know that government consists of people, individuals, and they belong to political parties. So there are interests that can actually be guided by individual interest or political interest and so on. So we are entering a territory which is very sensitive in that sense. Yeah.
So as a continuation of that, like since Apple didn't give access or comply with the law enforcement, what they argued is that you can have data, various data already, which already you have within various organizations like telecom companies. We just saw like AT&T, Verizon. Like they had access, like they had collected various metadata related to phones or backup computers on the cloud. So as sir just mentioned, so in serious threatening cases, or the only key, like the evidence, smoking gun evidence. So what happens when a victim dies, like it essentially it's unsolvable case, like there is no further justice or investigation possible. So in US, what makes this difference is that in US law enforcement cannot make a person witness to himself, like they cannot force a person to self-incriminate him. So there are also key disclosure laws, like it cannot force a person to disclose their password voluntarily. So only if they are voluntary, they can do so. Also this is only present in USA. If you compare to other countries like UK, Australia, they could legally force a person to divulge with their password or encryption key. Similarly in India, if we look at section 69 of IT Act 2000, it was amended in 2008. So it included a clause such that if you don't provide or comply with law enforcement officials to decrypt your device, you could be sentenced up to 7 years in prison. So the other argument was regarding national security. So as we just saw, like in major significant evidences now reside in a phone or any digital device. So as I mentioned before, it is the difference between an offender getting convicted or acquitted. So also since the inception of end-to-end encryption of Apple and its technology, like various terrorist organizations are using this to essentially hide themselves behind the technology. So what they are like here in this case, they have recruited and people, so it was enabling them to kill people. So in this case, like due to end-to-end encryption, it was not possible even for governments or any method to intercept the data, so to prevent any attacks. So next we will see an implication of a backdoor. So if Apple or any other tech company just it designs a backdoor from the start by design. So what it essentially makes it is not only providing a backdoor for the government. So as we sir just mentioned like there are repressive regimes which will use that power to monitor citizens or mounted dissidents, so who who will not agree with their ideologies. So it may use them to persecute them and do harm. So we have to understand also there is a presence of hackers. So they will also try. So if they are if they have knowledge about presence of backdoor, they will obviously try to gain access or exploit that backdoor to gain their financial or any other active intention. So the another argument for the government in relation to backdoor is regarding cyber security. So even though Apple as a company or any company which develops its own product, it is not significant, not significant, like it has a it would not be difficult to create a backdoor, but as previously mentioned, protecting that key it will be very difficult. It will have a higher cost, it will have various risk factors or threat vectors. So as you can see, like if we have some sort of master key, like it has to be stored very safe, like it has to be transferred, it has to be stored, and it has to be accessed. So it has various threat vectors within from which we have to protect. And also this comes at a very high cost, and if you are continuing this for a long time, you would have amassed such a huge data, like one incident is enough to leak all the data. So the stakes are also very high. So the concern is, if any of the, like I said, if any of the private escrowing keys are ever compromised, then all the data which were created by that key is permanently compromised. Also this was an incident. It was lawful interception of backdoor in Greece's national switches, telephone switches, that led someone, they did not actually find it, but what they did is they listened to the Greek parliament and to the prime minister's conversation during a sensitive part of the Olympic bid. So you can understand the impact of creating a intentional backdoor even to the governments. So from the business perspective, it is difficult for technology companies to coordinate with themselves and create a standard use. So even if, like in the case it mentions that after the incident of Snowden, like companies have even had the choice of creating a alternate products which one had a deliberate backdoor, and another thing it was catered to without a backdoor. So as a business perspective, it also made, even if they complied, it would made decisions in the companies very difficult to coordinate these activities, and it will obviously raise costs. So as we mentioned previously, it will like the foreign customers will obviously not want to use their services or try to go for alternate services which will advertise their features as privacy protective. So also in case of terrorist attack where there is a victim or it causes a major chaos in the country, it also could mean like the Apple could be sued in court, so that it even though after repeated warnings it did not comply. So it makes them reason through which the terrorist attack happened. So in July 2015, the US senator proposed that the crime victims should be able to sue a company if the encrypted devices allowed the user to commit a crime. So next we will see the various incidents and tools and regarding what Apple did in relation to privacy.
So hello everyone, we just now saw how many incidents have unfolded which created a trend among of privacy among the tech giants. And Apple, as you can see, it is one of the advertisement of Apple, and they have used privacy as one of the USP, and they have used it for their marketing purpose as well. Apple received, there were many incidents which showed why Apple is focusing on privacy. One of the reasons, some positive factors were that Apple received top rating in 2015 by an independent organization which fights for digital privacy. And it is a very surprising fact that only 9 tech giants were received these ratings out of 24. And also there were many experts said that the reason why Apple is more focused on privacy or less data tracking is that their business models. Apple, in previous case, yesterday we saw that how ShopSense uses data by customer to earn the money, or how their profits were there most from the customer data. Apple doesn't rely on customer data for its profit. We'll understand their business model also. We'll also compare how Google and Apple differ in the privacy, customer data and business models. So if you look at the business model of Apple, the major revenue is comes from the iPhones, manufacturing and selling them, and the rest were from services and other devices like iPads and Macs. Okay, and another thing is that it has a global audience and global customers, like it is spread across America, Europe, Greater China, and rest of the Asia. And as you can see, none of the revenue is generated from data analytics or user by selling the user data, or it does not rely on the user data. But does that mean that Apple does not store any data? For example, there are around 400 million iTunes accounts, which means that the iTunes accounts are used for all the purchases on the app stores. So it also means that Apple has a credit card data of around 400 million customer, and with that it also while registering for the Apple ID, you also have to give your name or the demographic info. So Apple does have user data, but it doesn't use it for generating of the revenue. Contrary to it, we look at the Google or Alphabet's business model. If you look over here, that then major of the chunk of the revenue comes from marketing, and same for the YouTube ads and all the other networks. So we can see that how Google is reliant on the user data it generates. So that's why companies like Apple do not track their data or user data, and that's why it received top ratings from all these firms. Moving on to next case, here Apple, as we saw, it has a global customer base, and in 2014 it had more sale in China than its US counterparts, and that's the reason due to many lawsuits and regulations, Apple had to create or store their user data of Chinese citizens in the China itself. They agreed to store the data in third largest data center in China. The reason was that Chinese government did not allow Apple to transfer its citizens' data outside of the China. In 2015, China accused Apple that it might be using backdoors and it might be tracking its citizens by US government. So Chinese government asked a security audit from the Apple. Initially, Apple did not agree for it, since the officials might also seek a backdoor from it. But many people have said that in the end, Apple did agree to China for the audit, and they might have also shared the code. It created a lot of criticism for Apple, but in the end, Tim Cook released a press release and said that we have never compromised with the privacy and have never allowed for backdoor entry for any government. So there are many instances, not only with China, and with also the US government, where privacy was compromised for safety or for law and regulations.